Welcome to another episode of The Tilted Halo. And yes, I am your host, Pastor Kathleen Panning, and I have a wonderful guest to be with me today, Laura Patterson. She's an entrepreneur, speaker, and author, and she is also the board member of several organizations and a globally recognized expert in customer-centric growth and marketing performance management. As president of VisionEdge Marketing, which she founded in 1999, Laura has helped over 300 companies replace the disconnected acts that often permeate within a business and steal time, money, and strategic capacity, and to replace that with deliberate, intentional, and measurable strategies rooted in creating business and customer value. Known for her pragmatic, data-informed approach, she is the architect of the Circle of Traction framework and the bestseller and award-winning author of Fast Track Your Business, and holds a patent for, and I hope I say this right, excellence. Is that correct?
Excellent. Just like you would think excellence.
Excellent, a software as a service application that created direct line of sight between business results and implementation tactics. A frequent speaker, executive advisor, and contributor to leading publications, Laura is passionate about helping companies eliminate inefficiencies and accelerate success through strategic clarity. Laura, it is absolutely wonderful to have you here today and to let everybody know you and I have met through an organization called Leadership Global. So that's where we've gotten to know each other a little bit.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be with you.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to have you because I think we're going to hear things a little different today than many of my guests. I always start by asking my guests to share some of your story, your journey, as much of your faith as you want to put into it, and how that all has gotten you to where you are today.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. And cut me off anytime I get too long. Bring that cane out. Okay, Kathleen?
No problem.
All right. So I came and am from a religiously observant home. I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home. I don't know how many listeners or members of your community might be familiar with that lifestyle, but that is really certainly grounded in a number of concepts, especially like the 10 Commandments. And we have an extensive number of commandments associated with Judaism and a life of what we would call discipline, because it is a very disciplined, rigorous religion if you are practicing it as it is intended. So I think discipline has been with me a very long time, and it's allowed me to be successful. Just a quick story that might kind of encapsulate it. So I'm only a second generation American. I had grandparents that immigrated here from Eastern Europe, some Western Europe, but predominantly Eastern Europe. And my grandfather, who I adored and often talk about, when my mother's mother passed away, which was when she was quite young. My mother's mother passed away. My mother was only like 21 years old. I was maybe 2 years old. So she was not old. My grandfather decided that he no longer needed to keep kosher. And as of course, we kept kosher. My mother was raised that way. My father was raised that way. We kept a kosher home. I still keep a kosher home to this day. But as I got older and was striking out on my own and going away to college, my grandfather and I had this conversation about keeping kosher. He said, you don't really need to keep kosher or worry about that when you go away to school. It's really an archaic concept. I mean, we now have much cleaner processes for food prep, and our dishware is very different. You know, it's not porous dishware. You can kind of just let that go. If you run into trouble, don't worry about that. And my comment to him was, it really isn't about a religious practice so much as it is a practice in discipline. Keeping kosher is a practice in discipline. And that if you can keep discipline wherever you are, it will stand you well, serve you well in your life. And so I lead a pretty disciplined life, not necessarily what I would call a religious disciplined life, just a disciplined life. And I think that makes for an easier decision-making process, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
But that's just an
That
example.
yeah, yeah, that would make a lot of sense in decision making in particular, and in business and as well, because business requires a lot of decisions, but
Last I
all of
heard,
life.
yeah,
Yeah.
last I heard, Kathleen, the average person makes 3,500 decisions a day.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That,
So,
yeah.
so if we can find ways to make that not be so difficult every single
Mhm.
time we make one, right? If we have,
Yeah.
whether you want to call those rituals or observances or acts of discipline or
Mhm.
intentionality, whatever you want to call it, that will make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, it certainly would. It would cut out having to think about a number of things because it becomes a little more automatic, I would expect, as to how
Yes.
you do things.
Yes, I think so. And if you have a moral compass, I don't want to tell people how to live their life, but if you have a moral compass, you understand right from wrong and good from bad and whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it, doing the right thing. There was a radio host many years ago who always ended her show, now go do the right thing. I don't know if
Mhm.
you ever heard that. If you think in those terms, I think decision making and running your business and how you live your life and how you engage with others and engage with your
Mhm.
family members, I think becomes a little bit a little easier because you're following some guidelines.
Right, right. In in Judaism, I know that in the Torah, which is for Christians, it's the first 5 books of the Old Testament.
Oh, I see one of my office members made his way into the office.
But in the Torah, there are something like 600
And 13.
com 613 to be precise, okay? Commandments, and then the Talmud, which is an explanation of and in talking about the Torah, there are thousands of other commandments based on uh, different teachers' interpretation and understandings of the Torah. So that could be quite confusing. How do you sift through all of those? I mean, 613, most of us have problems enough following 10, the basic 10 commandments. And so how do you manage all of that?
Okay, well, I don't want to get into theology because that is an area of
Yeah.
expertise in your world. I am not an X parameter. So, like some of them are around time or seasons or how you might do something when on a farm or what you might do in a particular situation. Some are specific to men and some are specific to women. Some are
Mhm.
specific to parents and some are specific to children. So, it's not like every single person might have to follow exactly 613. There would just be, periods of time where this is what you would maybe need to do. So what the commandments are, for example, on our high holy days, which are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the time of atonement, are applicable
Mhm.
then, but there might be some specific commandments that you wouldn't be doing the other days of the year. So hopefully
Uh-huh.
that, and I like to think of Judaism as, I'm sure that if there are Jewish people listening to this, I'm going to get myself in trouble, I'm sure, in hot water on some of my thinking, but that's okay. I would love the discussion. A religion of fences, and the law, which is the
Mhm.
commandment, right? And we are and were one of the first religions around the notion of a codified law. Of course, everybody
Mhm.
who studied history knows there was Hammurabi who came before us, and he had a code of law. But we were one of the first ones that operate as a religion of law. And so there is the law, but our rabbis along the way, and that's a very different kind of role than there are in some of the Christian practices where there are we have priests, but that's not necessarily the same thing as a rabbi. The
Right.
rabbis or the scholars or the teachers along the way said, we want to be careful that you don't actually violate that law. So we're going to make a little fence around that. So don't go inside this fence. That way you for sure won't violate the law. And then somebody else came
Mm.
along and said, that might get you awfully close to breaking the law. Let's make another little fence to go around that. And then that way, if you get on the other side of that fence, you'll still be okay. You won't be breaking the law. So I like to think that the rabbis have come up with ways along the way to keep us from violating the law. And so that's a way to maybe explain what they're doing in the conversation.
Mhm.
And the Talmud is essentially rabbis having discourse. And that is one
Right.
of the things that I think is unique about Judaism as a young person. You know, the Sabbath, as you for your community, is we observe that on Saturday. It starts at
Mhm.
sundown on Friday night and concludes at Saturday night, typically at 3 stars in the heavens. And what do you do when you can't do anything else on the Sabbath? You have discourse. So you would sit
Ah.
around the table and someone might pose a question. You might have children around the table, lots or members of the community that are sharing the Sabbath with you. And you would pose a question. The rabbi might pose a question, or an elder in the community would pose a question. And then you would have a conversation about it. Well, what do you think?
Mhm.
What do you think? And maybe children would ask another question, and they might ask children what they think. And so you would have this discourse. And I always thought that that was one of the remarkable things about our way of operating, is engaging children very young in the discourse.
Yeah, that is interesting, and it also teaches them a lot about the faith and
Yeah.
helps them start thinking about it. And one of the other things that I have heard, and this was also from somebody who is Jewish, I don't know how practicing he was or is in his faith, but that all of these commandments are, it's not like the understanding of God set this up to make life difficult, but actually to set it up so that even with the Ten Commandments, that if we follow those, that's the way life becomes its best. And instead of what I grew up with is all the thou shalt not, and it's like if you step across this line or violate the law, it's like you're going to get punished, and you're going to get this black mark in God's ledger or something like that. But one way to look at those commandments is that by following them, it makes life easier. It makes decisions easier. That moral compass becomes a way of helping life be at its best
I would
for
with that
us.
statement. I
Yeah.
think your friend or colleague was expressing it in a really great way. Now, not to
Mm.
say that you don't get in trouble when you violate things. You
Yeah.
can, we do believe that there are consequences to your one's
Hmm.
behavior. If you violate
Yes.
laws, there are consequences. But
Hmm.
we have a different view of things when we are violating a law that affects another human being versus violating the law that affects the universe or our relationship with God. And again, to go back to our high holy days, then we can only, God can only forgive us for our transgressions against God. To get forgiveness for transgressions against others, we must get their forgiveness. We must
Hmm.
ask them, and we must be truly, authentically sorry, and and express that and seek their forgiveness. Of course, ideally, hopefully, that person will forgive us, right? So, because we do believe there is a ledger, by the way, to your point, that is the whole point of Rosh Hashanah. The ledger opens
Yeah.
on Rosh Hashanah and closes on Yom Kippur. So we do have this concept of a ledger, an annual ledger in our faith, which I think might be a little bit different than many Christian faiths who, you don't really have that moment to pause. We have a very specific period of time to pause and
Mhm.
reflect. Are we living the life that we should be living, or the way we want to be living it, in line with what we believe, in line with the values that we hold, whatever those questions might be? We can be asking ourselves those questions and making sure that we can hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's a really valuable opportunity.
Yeah. And the, I don't want people to think that I was saying that we can just go violating these commandments and there's no consequences to it. No, 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 no. because like you say, yes, there are consequences, just like, you go speeding down the highway, the consequences, might well get a ticket for it. Or if we don't
Yes.
take care of our health, that's another consequence. And in our relationship with God, yes, there are consequences. And our relationship with other people, there are consequences. I've heard too many people liken it to, Santa Claus keeping a list of who's naughty and who's nice. And that part of it, I don't I don't see God as that kind of a person. Yes, God is aware of the ways in which we do not honor God and do not live according to what God desires for us. And forgiveness is important, and taking that pause. It would be, Christians have the idea of confession and forgiveness, and in many denominations. And so that part of it, but it's not a specific holiday. So there is a process for that confession and forgiveness in there. But to get off the strictly theological aspect of this,
Because I didn't go to seminary, and I hope I'm not
right?
stepping in the mud.
No, no, no. But I think it's a good background for what we're going to continue to discuss, and that is how, as a person of faith, this impacts the rest of your life and in business and those decision-making skills that you have. And one of the things that we have talked about a little bit is intention, how this impacts the intentions we have and the intentionality of what we do. So that's, how does that work for you?
I'm glad you're asking that question, because I do think that intentionality and discipline and faith are interrelated. And I think that life and business, they don't improve by accident. You have to be intentional if to move the needle, right? In whatever part of your life whatever you're trying to achieve, whether that's in your business, in your personal life, with your family, in your community. And, I've been in the corporate world. I spent 20 plus years in the corporate world. I've been at the helm of VisionEdge Marketing since 1999. And if anyone wants to count that, they'll find out that's a couple of decades as well. And I have seen a lot of people and a lot of companies in that period of time who can be very busy, but not make very much progress. So lots of busyness. And I think that intentionality is what allows us to choose what matters most and kind of align what we do, the actions we take every day, with our
Mhm.
purpose. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of I'm a fan of Marcus Aurelius. I love the concept of Stoicism. And one of the things or principles of Stoicism I really appreciate is the idea that focus on what's within our control, our choices, our actions, our behaviors. Try not to
Yeah.
focus so much on what other people are doing and get them to change. We should focus on what we do and our choices and what
Right.
we have control over. And I think if we're intentional and we live in an intentional way, we'll have more clarity about our life, and which goes back to our very first part of our conversation. Because I think
Mhm.
randomness, when we're random about our decisions and our life, I think we live in a life of chaos.
Hmm. Yeah. And there's certainly enough chaos in our world already that each of us deals with in multiple different ways, Um, so many times in just the language that we say is something like, you make me angry. You know, you make me so happy. We're giving away our power to someone else to determine our emotional state, or could be in business too. Why did you're ruining this type of idea. And yet we are the only ones who have control over our happiness, our emotions, and in what happens in how we respond to any of the events and activities around us.
I think,
And
Kathleen, this is such an important message for our young people.
yeah,
Our young people and the young people that are coming out of college and going to work. this idea that what they have control over and what they don't have control
Mhm.
over, and where to put their energy, and to recognize that they have that power. They can control how they behave, the choices they make. And I think that's a really important message for our young people.
Yeah. And I mean, it took me until I was probably in my 40s to actually hear that and to understand that. And it would have been so much easier if I had learned it, even as a teenager or even as a younger child, certainly in my 20s. But yeah, and that language is still so rampant in Western culture about how other people make us something or another. And I hear it even on newscasts with people interviewing somebody else. How did that make you feel? What does that mean? And it's like, no, sorry, reverse that language. How do you feel about that? Yes.
I
How
agree.
does that impact you? Yes. But it doesn't make me feel a certain way. It's not a
I totally agree.
cause. Yeah.
Totally agree.
So, and but that gets us into another idea in this, and one that I'm passionate about is that the idea of gratitude.
Hmm.
And some people have said to me that gratitude is so squishy. It's not something, it's nice and soft and good and things like that. But there's a lot of science behind gratitude these days. Dr. Robert Emmons is the father of the science of gratitude and how gratitude affects us, our health, our well-being, and it also affects business. How do you see gratitude impacting your business and the way you talk and deal with other people?
I'm so glad you're talking about gratitude, because I think it's probably one of the most important expressions for every person every day. I am so grateful. I mean, Vision Edge Marketing has been around as long as it has, and because of the customers we serve, the partners that have supported us, the people who work in the organization, I am grateful for everything that they have contributed, and making it possible to be of service to them and do good work. So I'm grateful for that in terms of my business every day. And I think
Mhm.
gratitude as a mindset, for lack of a better way to articulate it, it shifts how we focus. Instead of focusing on what's missing, gratitude allows us to focus on what's possible. And I think about all the amazing things that have been made possible for me along the way. And I am, every day, I end my day being grateful for, I encourage the people, and I don't want to tell people how to live their life, and this is not a philosophy podcast, but if you can end your day with being grateful for at least one thing, it will make a
Mhm.
huge difference in how you sleep and how you feel about your day. And if you can wake up the next morning and think about what you're grateful for as you go into the day, I mean, it just will make a huge shift. I think
Yeah.
that's an important thing. And I think one of the things that comes with gratitude is the idea of abundance. If you believe there is enough opportunity and enough goodness and enough possibility for everyone, you won't go around thinking you have to rob people. And there's no
Mhm.
other way to say it. I want to use the word clearly: rob or
Yeah.
steal from other people. Rob or steal from them in terms of customers, or rob and steal from them in terms of business or employees or partners or whatever it is. There is enough. And sort of back to stoicism, it kind of teaches us that adversity is our teacher in life, and that we can choose our perspective even in those difficult moments.
Mhm.
And if we can find moments to be grateful, even in times of adversity, then I think we can have the opportunity for more growth. And I think that permeates in how we live our day, live our
Yeah.
lives.
One of the comments that I have adopted is to ask myself, what went right?
Oh, I love that
And
question.
yeah, and even in a business meeting where there might be disagreements, or if faith community, there are always disagreements in faith communities, you know, may come as a surprise for some people, but then they are there. And it's because we're different human beings that we have those differences, and that's okay. We can do a lot of good things by working through that and seeing other perspectives. But so often we think that because somebody doesn't agree with me, that something's wrong, and that it's becomes difficult when things don't work out the way we want them to. Or you look at the numbers from a quarter and they don't match up to the expectations and the goals. So instead of, yes, look at what didn't work and learn from that, but also remember to look at what went right. And there are always things like that. And that's where gratitude also comes in, to celebrate the little things as well as the big ones, as to what went right in a day. There might have been a difficult meeting, but there may have been one really good phone call. There, the way somebody gave you just a smile uh, in passing, or asked, how is something that was important to you? You know, those little things we often pass over because the problems dominate. But
Yeah,
when we can focus on those little things as well as the big things that went right, that's where gratitude becomes so much easier.
I agree. But I'm really grateful for the problems, because if my customers didn't have problems, I wouldn't have opportunities.
Right? Right. And like you said, those are also our growth points.
Exactly.
And to learn to be grateful even for those problems, like
Yes.
you said,
Yes.
can be a very useful tool and a very useful way to deal with that. And that that's not something most of us get taught as children, to be grateful for those kinds of things. The other thing with gratitude, are there any ways that you have found of incorporating it, intentionally incorporating gratitude into a business?
Well, you know, again, it there's always every opportunity to say thank you to anyone who's helped you.
Mm,
Is I mean, why would you pass up that opportunity to say thank you and to let people know you really made a difference, or how you handled that meeting made a difference, or thank you so much for taking the time to take those great notes. There's so many ways to say thank
mhm,
you and be grateful to people. Or, the person who did something for you because they wanted to be helpful. They're not maybe people that you paid to help you, but they came across and said, I think I could fix that for you. And they fix that for you. But besides saying thank you, what can you do to show your gratitude? I think this is
uh,
where maybe there is the opportunity for all of us. It's one thing to be grateful and say thank you, and it's another thing then to do something because you do feel grateful. So, what
mm,
is an action you can take that shows that you are grateful, that you are appreciative, that you are thankful? So, if someone does something for you, do something more than just say thank you. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Ideally, it should be something that they care about.
mhm.
But just as long as you find a way to show an act of gratitude, not just a voice of attitude of gratitude.
Yeah, both of those are important. So yeah, saying thank you, or verbalizing that, it might be, you know, putting in a note to your supervisor about what somebody did that was helpful, and, letting that go up the chain, so to speak. And for somebody who is like the CEO, and hopefully it would start at the top of an organization to implement more gratitude intentionally into an organization. But, the pastor, the CEO, whoever, to start a process of, how do we express gratitude? How do we share that and show that within uh, the company, within the
It's a great
organization?
That was a great example of some if you're working inside a company, and for someone like us, when we're working with someone inside our customer base, and that we try really hard to make sure that someone who's been doing a great job gets recognition for what they're doing to help move that
Mhm,
initiative forward to their team, to their boss, right? Not just, and it's easy to do, people, for all of us, take a moment and fill out those satisfaction surveys when someone
Uh-huh,
helps solve a problem. As simple as that can be a thank you, right? For the
uh-huh,
customer service person who saw, I just did this the other day. We had a problem with our QuickBooks. We use QuickBooks in our company. A lot of people do. And we were having
uh-huh.
a challenge technically, and a person Michael in Nashville, Tennessee, solved that problem for us. He did such a great job. And when the survey came, a lot of people just move on from that. We took the time to not only answer the survey, but in every way point out what Michael had done and how appreciative we were that he.
And especially people in customer service, they usually get dumped on with a
Yes.
lot of things. And so to make it a point to know the person's name for one, and like you said, to fill out those surveys and to respond to them and to acknowledge what the good things somebody does. That's just really, really important. And that talks about relationships and leadership and how building authentic relationships. Say how you approach that as a person of faith, what that means to you in your work.
Okay, so this is a belief of mine that nothing meaningful happens alone.
Mm,
I just think that that is a, a guiding light for me. So the the people I look back in my career to the people I worked for and the people I worked with, and today the people I work for and with in terms of customers, the people I work with in terms of partners. The most successful leaders I work with value a relationship over a transaction. And
mm,
I hope, I hope that the people I have worked with recognize that I am about the relationship, not the transaction. And if I can be of value, even if it doesn't turn into something financially beneficial for the company or for me, if it helped them, I believe that that's a value in the relationship. And in time, what goes around comes around. I think people want to be
mhm.
seen, heard, and valued. All of us do. I think we walk around with a sign that says,
Yeah.
please see me, please hear me. And that you get better outcomes if you're collaborative with
Yeah.
one another. Because
Yeah.
I know I don't know all the answers,
Mm,
Kathleen.
mm.
I mean,
Oh,
I'm relatively smart. I'll say that out loud, but I don't know all the answers. And so if I want a better product for our customers, or I want a better outcome for our company, or whatever it might be, collaboration is a way to do that. Even this is a form of collaboration. You're making me think
right.
about things. We're having a conversation. It's a
Right.
better result than if I had just if you said, Laura, can you go in and to my thing and just start rambling on these 5 questions? This is better, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also more fun. You know, it can be at least. You can look at this as a way of, yeah, I've gotten to know Laura and she's helping me think about things in a different way, or he's helping me see that there's another angle to this that I didn't understand before. And maybe it's something that we really needed to be aware of to avoid a problem, but it may also be another potential. Even avoiding that problem may create another potential good thing. And so to see the different gifts that people bring and to be able to acknowledge those gifts and to appreciate them. That's part of a good, authentic relationship in my book. So, and in business, how can you do things in business when you don't appreciate what other people bring to it? You know,
Yes.
it won't
You know,
work.
trust is a big conversation today in the world of AI. There's a lot of
Hmm.
conversations going on about trust. And I think
Hmm.
that service and authentic connection help create trust. And that trust is what allows us to create lasting impact with the people that we interact with, whether that's personally or professionally. And
Hmm.
so it's going to be interesting as we watch this technology unfold, how service and authentic connection play out in the relationships we have with other human beings.
Yeah, yeah. And to part of that trust is to acknowledge when AI is used and
Yeah.
how it's being used in things. I mean, I see things. on YouTube and things like that, or any place on the internet these days, and it's, well, that ad, that's gotta be created with AI because, it just you just anything about fitness and health, and you see the before and the after, and it looks, wow, that always works for somebody, and I'm going, you know, if it would be nice to know that that was actually a human being, but these days, I just credit it to AI.
Yeah, some people are doing a better job than others of acknowledging where and when they have
Right.
incorporated AI. Like one of the things we do, we have a frequently asked questions section on our blogs, whether they're on
Mhm.
LinkedIn or on our website. And we put on there that those were created, by an AI. Because why did we do the frequently asked questions? For the AI. I mean, that's how AI finds you and some of the things that you need to know about how to
Right.
leverage AI to help you connect, with people. So you want to acknowledge when AI is doing that. We use AI to make images. We're very clear about that,
Mhm.
and it's pretty obvious that we do that. On the other hand, I worry about the graphic designers and the photographers that because now that we're all going to AI to make our imagery and graphics, those
Yeah.
people are certainly being affected. But on the other
Right.
hand, they've made it pretty hard for us to use their stuff. So this is the
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing with trust is it takes time to build that, but it's so easy to lose it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, totally agree with that.
So, so, so easy. So yeah, we need to work with that. As you think about your career and going forward and um, your path, sometimes the path we're on looks crystal clear and we know exactly what we're doing and how to get there. And then there are other times it's like everything's in a great big fog. How does what you do and how you approach life and faith, how does that help you in those times where there are at least question marks on the path or maybe just totally foggy?
So this is, I think, a really good question, and I've given it some thought. And so here's some of the things that occurred to me as I was thinking about this question. I don't need to know every step. I just need clarity on the next right step. And I hope for the people listening that will be helpful to them because I think a lot of us think we have to
Mhm.
know every single point on the path before we do anything. And I just want to let you know that it's okay if you don't know every single point on the path. You just need clarity on the next right step. I've learned, now that I've been around for a while, to trust that there is a bigger purpose unfolding, even if I can't yet really see that outcome. So that's back to faith. Some of the best opportunities that I've had in my life came from paths I never planned. And
Yeah.
faith gives us confidence, right?
Mhm.
That we are creating meaning beyond immediate results. It's not always about
Right.
instantaneous results, instant gratification. If you have faith, then you believe that what you're doing may not have meaning right this moment, but it will
Yeah.
eventually. And,
Yeah.
all of us need to come to some way to get comfortable with accepting uncertainty. I think that's what probably been my biggest challenge in my life. If you ask me what is my
Mhm.
biggest challenge, is getting comfortable with accepting uncertainty so that I can act with courage and intention. Because if you don't accept uncertainty, then you just are paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so if we can accept uncertainty, then we can act with courage and intention.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said about, just focus on the next step. The
The next
next
right
one,
step.
the next right step. And, what is the next step? What is the next right step? Because there could be possibilities for different steps there. And to trust that even though you may think it's the right step, maybe it doesn't turn out to be the best step along the way, but it can get you moving in the direction that you want and can course correct along the way.
Exactly.
So that that there's what I call grace in the process, the possibilities in the process. And I also like what you said that, you know, there are often things that come along the unpredictability of life, the uncertainty of it, that all of this can get used along the way. I mean, I've done stuff that I never thought would be part of where I am today, but the path has kind of gone like this and like this at times, and yet it's all part of the fuel for the present.
Yes. Every experience, is a layer
Yeah.
to the next experience, right? The step to the next
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that kind of leads me to ask you, what do you want your impact to be in the
Well,
bigger
on
picture?
yeah, on the business front, I'll speak to the business front. I hope that people will remember me for helping them find that strategic clarity and for
Mhm.
having more confidence in the decisions that they're making because they had data and guidance and process and measurement to help them, which is all part of a discipline, discipline of alignment and accountability. I hope that I'm helping leaders replace those random acts with intentional action. It's so easy to get sucked into what we call the vortex of random acts, whether it's random acts of marketing, random acts of measurement, random acts of selling, just random acts of customer service. And that is what I think can throw organizations into, helter-skelter. They're just in that busy mode. So if we can get with intentional action. And I guess on the personal front, my father was a major part of my life and had a huge impact on how I look at the world. And for him, and I think I believe in this, success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about the
Mhm.
positive difference you make in other people's lives. You always said it doesn't matter what you've accumulated. It's about who's the lives you've touched along the journey. And so I think personally, I hope that that is what I'll leave behind is that I made a positive difference in people's lives and that I hopefully am helping, whether it's the young people that work in our company or members of our team or others that we interact with, or the people in my community or in my ecosystem to lead a better, more intentional life where they can see possibilities, that they don't feel
Mhm.
stuck. Because I think, legacy is really less about what we build and more about who we help become better.
You know, and when you look at life that way and success that way, it means that's available to everybody.
Yeah,
You don't
everybody.
have to have a certain income. You don't have to be a professional at something. You can be a janitor. You can be a teacher. You can whatever, and still have that positive impact
Yeah.
and to be an authentic person in that impact. And that, yeah, that means success. It's not a dollar sign. It's not all
Yeah.
the
It can't
stuff.
be about that. If it's about that, you'll
Yeah.
never be happy. You'll never have enough. You'll never feel full. You'll never feel anything. I think, I don't know if, that, because I'm just sharing the wisdom that my father passed on to his children.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for that because I think it's allowed me to have and feel like I live a pretty blessed life.
Mhm.
I hope that,
Uh,
there's a few good
Right,
takeaways here for some of the people
right,
listening.
right. I would like people for before you go, for people to know how to get in touch with you if they
Well,
find something what you said that they want to follow up with.
sure, I would love to hear from members of your community. So they can always reach me on email, Laura P, first name, last initial, at visionedgemarketing.com. I'm on LinkedIn. If you type in Laura Patterson, I'm usually one of the first couple that pop up into your search, and happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm much more active on LinkedIn than any other social platform for people who are listening that might
Mhm.
want to reach out to me on some other platforms. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn as a social platform. And you're always welcome to come to the site, either visionedgemarketing.com or my personal site, laurapatterson.co, and engage that way as well. Happy to hear from you. I may not have all the right answers, but I'm really good at asking good questions.
Ah, that's a good start. Always a good start. So thank you, Laura. This has been delightful. I think we could continue talking on this related topics for quite a bit more time, but we got to find some way to end one conversation and leave it open for another one to come.
Yes, another conversation. I would love that. Thank you very
So
much, Kathleen, for having me.
thank you. And to all the people who are watching and listening, blessings to you for this day, and find at least one thing that went right for today to be grateful for. So until next time, take care.